everyone. I see we've got some folks joining. Welcome, welcome. If you're just joining us, we're excited to have you. And as we have, give people some time to join, feel free to put your name into the chat here and tell us where you're joining from. I see Ashley Lewis came in. Sarah, Jake, hey. Oh, right. Very excited to see everyone. Very cool. New York, Bay Area, Bozeman, Boston, New Jersey. Oh, this is awesome. Chrissy and Tyler, hey guys. Mike Day. So last week we had all of Adam's childhood friends from like Michigan, like from like elementary school joining. It was amazing.
I'm looking to see if anyone's in there right now.
Yakima, Washington, PA. This is awesome. And if you're also wanting to tell us things about yourself, hey Esnaldo, tell us what made you join today. What excited you about Just Add Water? What excited you about the River of Return film and about the work that Jessica and Sammy are doing? Let us know what you're excited to talk about, and then we'll give folks a couple more minutes to join. Love this river. Yes, and can't wait to hear the story. Apparently, Sam and Jess should spend this time that we have while people join telling everyone about your 5-star meals. Do you guys want to tell us a few things about that while we wait for folks to join?
I don't know if they're 5-star meals, but we do try to eat well.
Yeah. Yes.
So give us an example. Give us an example of like your go-to river meal for your group.
You want to just talk about breakfast?
Well, there's one that goes right into breakfast that's really awesome.
Which one?
So we do a big old taco salad with this smoked pork. And so people can do whatever they want with it. You can just make it into whatever you want. And it's sort of like a big salad bar. And you just add this smoked pork into it. And then in the morning, we refry that because we put out chips and salsa, which Paul Echohawk and his wife, soon-to-be wife, Sarah, make this really great salsa that they bring. They bring these big cans of salsa. So we pull those out with some chips, and in the morning, all of that gets mixed with eggs. So we get salsa and chips and eggs together, and then you put the smoked pork back in it, and you just reserve it again for breakfast, but just with eggs. And it's like the best meal and the best way to make 2 meals out of one.
So we prioritize having really good food on the river because, for one, food brings people together. And then second, sometimes the people who go with us, they don't have access to the food that, of course, people would want to eat all the time. And so in that moment, we try to take care of everybody, not just emotionally, but like physically too, so that they're ready to be on the river, that they have the energy to like do whatever it is that we're going to be doing that day. But it's just one way that we tell the people we're with that we love them, is by feeding them really well.
Cool. Very cool. Yes, I agree. Food brings people together. And I will say, once I went on a river trip after backpacking and doing some other things, I was like, you guys eat so much better than everyone else. Like, what have I been doing? So, but yeah, so it's 5:05. I'm sure we'll have some folks joining, but we're really excited to have everyone here. Today we're going to be watching a beautiful, beautiful film directed by Skip Armstrong of Wazi Motion Pictures, associated with NRS. And the film is about the work that Sammy and Jessica are doing, who are here. Just hearing about some of their culinary wonders. We also have Amy Kober from American Rivers here and Mark Deming from NRS. So we'll all give further introductions and talk, but my name is Faith. I'm one of your hosts for Just Add Water, and this is Adam.
I'm one of your other hosts.
Yeah, so after the film, we'll have everyone introduce themselves and say where they're joining from. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, while we watch the film, we're going to ask all the panelists to mute your video and audio so that we have the best possible playback quality across. We'll also post a link in the chat if it's not coming through folks clearly in the webinar, so you can click on there and watch it. The film's about 25-30 minutes long, so settle in. It's really great. It's really worth the time. I've watched it about 4 times at this point, and I've watched it in my van on the road, so I think it's an excellent film, and I think you guys will really enjoy it. So yeah, we'll kind of lean into that. We'll have the panelists click out. I'll post if it hasn't been posted in the chat, I'm going to post that in here now, and we can get started.
Awesome. Very cool. Yes, so we're going to play the film, and loving your comments in the chat, guys, so we'll be able to address those things after too. Thanks for sharing with us. All right, see you soon.
This place is all the things I want for my kids and all the things I want for the young people of my tribe. This place is medicine. This place is my home. It's my mama. It's my heart.
Nananiha Sammy Matza. My name is Sammy Matza. Me and my wife, Jessica.
We are taking our community, our tribal members, our tribal youth onto the river of the Middle Fork of the Salmon.
The Middle Fork is really ideal for these trips. There's no fences, there's no roads, there's very little to any fragmentation or disconnection of habitat. And I didn't see this growing up. A lot of the adults here on the reservation haven't seen it. A lot of the youth haven't seen it. My wife didn't see the Middle Fork until she was adult. And so I think what we're offering isn't just a free trip on the river, but actually a great opportunity to reconnect to a really special place to us.
For these trips, we're doing a lot of things.
Tate, Luzaha, Eli, Fisher, Warren. Time for class. Kids, Gimai. We're gonna play a game. These are our agay. So what is agay? Salmon. I'm gonna roll them, and you're gonna try to throw your spear through the hoop. So we're learning how to hunt and fish. This is helping with hand-eye coordination. So which one is gonna be harder to get through? Yes. Do we got that? Thumbs up? Yes? All right. We ready? Here we go.
We, as Shoshone-Bannock tribal members, we've wanted to do something that moves us forward. So we've been building this curriculum for our river school. We're using science, technology, engineering, education, art, and mathematics. And most important, we bring our culture into it as well. But there's many aspects.
It's a trip where we can feel safe to laugh together, to challenge each other. And I really love being here because it's a time we can calm down and fish and just watch the kids play and just really celebrate as a community. Like I can imagine that that's how it was in the past and how things used to be. I feel like Sam and I have been together for not just this life, but we've been together before. Sometimes he needs help talking through his feelings. And I feel like that's where I can help him.
So Jessica, she's this old spirit who's all about her emotions. She will tell you how she feels about something, and she will acknowledge your feelings, and she will get you to talk through those feelings and get you to understand where you're at, whether you like it or not.
He's really smart. He knows a lot of things about a lot of things.
She's so powerful, and I just love her so much.
He's been with me at my very lowest when I felt broken. He made me not be ashamed of those things. He helps me to see my own strength.
I just think she's the most beautiful person who takes care of me and protects me. And I love her for that every day. She's this wonderful human being who's helped in my healing. And both of us are still going through a process of healing.
Before Sam and I were married, I was in a violent relationship, and that man tried to murder me.
I was deployed into Iraq as an infantryman with IEDs and RPGs and small arms fire. We both know what it means to risk our lives and have our lives before us and think that we're not going to live much longer. As Native Americans, what we're going through as an Indian or an indigenous person, that's just full of challenge. Jess and I, we have our own personal stories, but as a tribe, we have this really ugly past. Just over 100 years ago, our ancestors were removed from this place, from the Middle Fork of the Salmon River. Trying to reconcile that for me starts out as a really sad feeling, and a feeling of loss, and a feeling of disconnection from all of the things that when those people left over 100 years ago, all the things that they probably wanted to teach the next generation, that they were used to teaching the next generation. So that disconnect very literally from who we are today to who we were then, and then trying to come back to that working towards this challenge. And that, in many ways, is what these trips are all about.
There's this campsite. I look forward to it every year. And we do our traditional foods night. And I really love being here because there's these mussels. We go in the water and gather them. And I can't see them, but I just feel for them and talk to them. I let them know that we're here and that we're really happy to see them. I call these guys grandpas because they're pretty old, some of them. You know, the really big ones that fit in your hand, they're like 100 years old. And so these guys are probably like, I could guess they're about 80 years old and they've seen a lot. And I like to think that their ancestors knew my ancestors and that we're reconnecting again. They're really beautiful. I'm gonna clean them here in a little bit. I'll ask my girls to help me. I think they're saying, hey, where have you been? We've been waiting for you. We missed you. I'm so excited I bit my lip.
Oh.
You miss it?
For our tribal youth, we've noticed that there's this theme going on. When we first get going on the river, they seem uneasy, and they seem to be afraid of the river. And maybe this is because they've never known a world without constraints. Back on the Fort Hall Indian Reservation, they see potato fields, wheat fields, they see canals, ditches, roads, highways, dams, and are sometimes living in the deficit statistics that are reported about Native American people. We have high substance abuse, suicide rates, obesity, diabetes. And so it's really hard for them to imagine what the world looks like when it isn't fragmented and disconnected. And so I think for them to see this unrestricted landscape really frees them. And after a couple of days, they start to ease into it and they start to realize where they're at. And they start to realize the freedom that they have and their own identity on that landscape. And they start to feel their own self coming free from what they feel from on the reservation.
This whole river is so spiritual. I love this place. and it has a lot of meaning.
When we stop at cultural sites, I realize that those places are very important to how we used geography, how we used mathematics, science, technology, and how we were teaching and learning that throughout the year. And I think about how my ancestors would have used the land to get water and to get food and to hunt and to fish and to gather. And so I think really deeply about our language and the culture and what it means to revitalize that and bring it back to life.
It's just such a powerful place to be somewhere that your ancestors were at, that you could see how they live and experience what our people are capable of. That's why I say I think that when you go down the Middle Fork, it's almost like you're calling your spirit back to you. That maybe that's the part of you that needed to be taken care of.
Everyone gather over here.
Takte, Malia, Anna. So find your name and where you're sitting. Find your spot, find your spot.
Mom, I didn't get cake.
Nobody got cake yet. Okay, here we go. There's this transformation that happens, like every day going down the river. We see it in drum making, in drawing, when we're painting, during science class, and during math lessons. Takte, where's the radius at?
The middle.
Yes, good job. I just see their confidence building in who they are. I see them coming out of their shell or coming out of this uncertainty and starting to just show us who they are and showing themselves who they are too. I just know that a lot of beautiful things happen when we're on the river together.
The last evening that we're on the river, we've been noticing our youth saying, okay, this is who I am. These are my homelands. This is my identity. I feel free, and this is my home. This is where I want to stay, and they don't want to leave the river. Their transformation that they go through is really impressive for the week that we're on the river. Within the 7 days we're here.
I'd like everyone to stand and dance. Try to get in a circle. The way this one goes is that you double time it. So I'll dance with you guys. Saiboya, 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 Saiboya. Yaro yagara mando yara mando wegwandora. Yaro yagara mando yara mando wegwandora. Saiboya, 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 Saiboya. Biaro yagara mando yara mando wegwandora. Yara yagara mando yara mando wegwandora. My pants. Yara yagara mando yara mando wegwandora. I want to thank all of you, and I hope some of you keep that dance and keep some of the songs in your heart. Thank you very much.
We had a lot of really great learning moments happening along the river, and I have a memory and a thank you and deep appreciation to every single one of you. And so the fact that you all gave us your trust to get you down the river means a lot to us. The trust of my family to bring my siblings down the river means a lot to me.
I honestly don't know what to say. 'Cause outside of this place, I have had no real life. But when I come here, I have no life other than to be with you guys. Just thank you all for letting me sing and share my heart with you guys. 'Cause when I go home, I'm not gonna have the same laughter that I have with you guys. I'm not gonna have the same joy as when I'm hanging on for dear life with Sterling. But right here on this river holds my heart, and this river is my heart's home, and I want to thank you all.
I wanted to let you all know that you're wonderful and you're smart, hard workers. This is gonna make me cry. I'm just so proud of you, all of you, that you're mathematicians, and we've always been mathematicians, and I just love you guys a lot, all of you.
We love you guys.
We do.
Thank you for being here.
So when I see you off the river, I'm still Auntie Jess, okay? Alright. And Mom. And sister. Alright, thank you. I get a little bit emotional because like we need each other, and when we're missing that part about our identity, or missing that connection that we used to have, then we're not whole people. And when we start to facilitate just having that love again, it makes me excited, not just for myself but my kids. It goes beyond me. It goes, my grandkids are gonna know about these relatives and this river, and I don't know what the feeling is called, but I know that in order to ensure that my family is taken care of, I need to do this.
The river is a really powerful life force. It has the ability to wash the land, and that healing force and that healing energy, it can carry the things within us that need to be carried away. When we travel down the river, it's not surprising that there's a transformation of who we are. It's really carrying us and helping us heal.
My greatest hopes are just to take more of our tribal youth down the river. They're in this place where they're just about ready to go into the world on their own. And I feel like it would just be a good foundation for them to experience their home and just thrive and grow from it. I see kids right now who could just use it. Yeah. I just know that the river would change their lives.
All right.
All right. Let everyone get back in.
Such a powerful film. I know that I am overflowing with questions. I'm sure you all are too. I know, trying to make us all cry. I know everyone's just open your eyes in the chat. So beautiful. Yes, everyone's like, thank you for sharing this. So just a logistical thing. There's a Q&A field that is in the bottom of the chat. So if you have a question, you can throw it in there, and we'll try our best to incorporate those. We're gonna start with what we have prepared, but then we'll be pulling audience questions in as well. So definitely leave those in there.
Cool. All right. So without a little bit further ado, we're going to start with some introductions of everyone here. And I'd like to start with Sammy and Jessica. If you could introduce yourselves outside the context of the film, let people know a little bit about who you are and how you got started and your organization and doing river trips like you're providing for folks.
So Sam and I, like how we do everything, we just tag team all the time, and so we'll be going back and forth a lot, I'm pretty sure. But my name is Jessica Matzo. I am a member of the Shoshone-Bannock tribes. I am a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter. I'm a big sister, I'm the oldest out of my family. I am a teacher here on the reservation in our tribal school. I teach high school students, which is really fun. It's one of my favorite things to do. Yeah, I think for now that's good.
Nananiha Sammy Matzo. My name's Sammy Matzo. I am also a husband and a father and grandfather and an extended family member here in the Shoshone-Bannock tribes and with my father's family. And then my mother's family is Oglala Lakota. Just happy to be here, and it's an honor, and we really are really happy about the comments that are coming in. Everybody's enjoying how much the film's coming across to them, and we're really appreciative of that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your introductions. And maybe we could have Amy from American Rivers introduce herself.
Hey, thanks, Adam. Hey, everyone. I'm Amy Kober. I'm the VP for Communications at American Rivers. We are a national river conservation organization nationwide. I'm based in Portland, Oregon. But at the most fundamental level, we believe that life needs rivers, which I think this film just so beautifully illustrates on so many levels.
And we've got Mark from NRS. If you could introduce yourself, give a little context to how you came to be here and all that.
Sure. Yeah, as Adam said, I'm Mark Deming with NRS, and had the good fortune and the pleasure of meeting Sammy and Jessica in our community here in Moscow, Idaho, where they lived until a few months ago, actually, while doing their studies at the University of Idaho, and fell in love with them and their family and their story, and just am really glad that we were able to play a small part in helping bring that to the world and share that with everyone. It's so powerful, and they're such powerful people. I just feel an immense amount of gratitude toward them for letting us into their lives for that river trip, so that we could kind of experience that river through their eyes.
Thanks, everyone, for introducing yourselves to our participants. And now we're kind of just going to dive right into the Q&A. We have some pre-prepared questions that we've put through for everyone. I'm obviously in a busy place. So I know, Sammy and Jessica, you spoke with Faith earlier this week already, kind of about a lot of subjects, but some of those was the importance of mixing traditional with the modern. And there's this shot in the film of the flautist playing his traditional flute juxtaposed against the NRS life jacket. And for Faith and I, that just kind of stuck out as this really very clear mix of a traditional culture and a very modern technology, basically. Same thing with the little girl and all the gear, but she's still taking a class about drumming, and the dabbing had us face just doing laughing constantly. Like every shot of the kids dabbing on the boat, we kind of fell out of our chairs. But we don't think people believe in this dual existence very much, and of course they don't really see this that often. And I think for us, that's another reason that your film was so touching for us, is that it melded this so perfectly, at least in our experience. And one question I had as having a history as a guide and an outdoor educator was how you came around to incorporating STEM teaching with the traditional teachings, and how you find that marriage of ideas working in your classroom, in nature, and in practice. question makes sense. I got a little rambly there at the end. I'm sorry.
Want to go first?
Good.
So I was picking up what you were laying down. But really, you know, we've had a lot of great mentors. We've had a lot of people who have just given us guidance throughout our lives, but, you know, especially within the world of academia. And it's kind of funny because as you were talking, I was like, you're describing us, like us together, our marriage. And so Sam and I, we have a lot of discussions about how, you know, there's always a struggle to break stereotype of just what people conceptualize as what are Native American people. And I say what as in like a thing. So a lot of times there's, you know, the idea of feather and leather or these really bad stereotypes having to do with those deficit statistics that we talked about. But in reality, we're living, breathing, walking people who live in the same time and use the same technology as everybody else. But yeah, mostly it's just, you know, for the most part, for me, just so I don't take up all the talking space, just pushing back on those stigmas, like we live in a 21st century. We have cell phones. We, you know, we access our traditional homelands and our traditional foods, but we also use a stove to cook them. So.
Yeah, so we've been forced into this situation, and so we have to use like Western tools of science or technology. We were not, as we mentioned in the film, we're not in our homelands anymore, and so in order to access them, the most thing that makes the most sense is to go on a raft. And so it just so happens that we're going to go whitewater rafting as we go down the river. That's not the goal. That's not the aim. And our goal and our aim is not to be anywhere exotic. That's our homelands, and that's what's important to us. In order for us to survive, we adapt. And then the way we adapt is we have to incorporate what's around us. And that's the way we've always done things as Native people. We incorporate what's around us and we make the best use of it, and we try to do the best that we can with those materials, whatever they may be. And in the time that we're in now, that's exactly what we're doing, and that's exactly what you see in the film, is that we're mixing things up and we're redefining where we're at in the 21st century in a way that makes sense to us and still carries our culture forward. And so that's what we're trying to do with this project as well. We're really trying to put our knowledge back on the land where it came from with our people.
Yeah. And just to add on to that really quick, so by us being there, that is not the last story of the Tukadika. So our relatives, like our families that were there, that's not the end of the story. That, you know, this really sad, forcibly being removed to a place, but, you know, that resiliency to come back, to find our way back home, to me, that's such a powerful thing. And it doesn't matter what time period we're in, that is always going to happen.
I love that. This is like answer number one, guys. So we know we're in for a wonderful conversation here. I know I'm not the only one that felt this way while watching, because I literally had a text saying the same thing. But when I was watching my time, I was like, couple goals, look at this love story. And so, you know, I can also nerd out on the importance of representation all day as a documentary filmmaker myself. But it's interesting because I think so often, as far as the representation goes, it's like, oh, look at this person that exists. It's not, look at this Shoshone scientist. Look at these beautiful little kids out here experiencing these things. Look at this love story. Very often it's just like, this person exists in this place. And I felt like, you know, it's also hard to open up and share your life and share your passion and to the world, you know. And I was wondering, in considering the balance of like, this is kind of scary sometimes to open my life up to people, and like the importance of it, you guys chose that it was more important. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about why it felt important to share the work that you're doing and the way that you're doing it, and your love story with the world.
You should go first.
so we bring up these ideas about deficit statistics, that's kind of what we hear, and that's the narrative that gets shared around us. And so our environment becomes this idea that we're supposed to fail. And so in order to, so how do we see ourselves in the future? How do we see ourselves as leaders, professors, whatever those may be, and if we don't have those people at our dinner table? And so for us, one of those ways that we're trying to work through things, myself having a PhD and Jessica having a master's degree, is that we're educated, but also that we're also from this community. And so we're sharing in that idea about not just a love story, but also as role models, to give different options, to make it real for our young people, to see the idea of like, what does it look like to be healthy people? What does it look like to be somebody who's educated? What does it look like who's putting these resources together and doing something different in a way that they don't necessarily get to see every day? And so one of those things that we're doing and those positive options that we're providing is that we're doing this idea about we have to share what we learn, and that's just a given in our culture. So what we're doing is we're trying to share in a contemporary healing process. And so what does that look like? And what you see in the film is a lot of what's going on, but it's much more complex, and it's much more, there's a lot of moving parts and pieces that kind of got distilled down, but we still, I think in that story was, Skip, the director of the film, he did such a good job of really capturing what we were doing, and really helped us get ourselves organized too about what we were doing. And so it was a back and forth.
So it's funny because a lot of times I think as Native people, we don't like put things separate and label them, or like, it's just, we just do it. And so like we as a family try to be healthy, and we take care of, you know, inward first and then work our way out. And so for us, you know, we really had to support each other in our own healing, but at the same time, we had to do a lot of work, be in some really uncomfortable spaces with ourselves, just dealing with, you know, things that we've been through in our lives, and having that support system and having someone who actually can say, I understand what you're feeling and what you're going through, and, you know, I'm here for you. That has been so much of like the work that we do. Like we don't do the work for each other, but we're there to support each other. But then that's the same thing, those are tools, right? So we pick up these tools along the way, and it really does come back to that we want to give them away. We want to give these things that we've learned back to our community, to our young people. And so on purpose, we share ourselves, because how else do we do things as Native people but to see and watch and I heard this saying once, and it just stuck to me. I can't remember where it was from, but it's like, you put your puppies on the road, like, you know, you walk the talk kind of thing. And I just love it. Like wherever I'm at, Sam is invited, and vice versa, our family. So I'll be in the classroom, and, you know, maybe I need help, and he's not a teacher. He's not paid to do anything, but if I need him, he'll come and, you know, talk to the young men, or just really be loving towards me publicly. And it sets a standard. And so for us, we understand that people are watching us, and so we hold ourselves accountable.
Awesome. Yeah, wow, we're very happy that you're sharing yourselves with us too through this film and through this conversation. So thank you. I wanted to jump to Amy from American Rivers. A lot of the work that you all are doing is also related to this idea of how important it is to blend modern and traditional. But it's more complicated than that. And with everything that we see happening in our country right now, we keep being reminded that until we address these inequities that exist, they aren't going to go away. And, you know, we're in this moment where people are realizing finally through this continued death of unarmed Black people with Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd and Breonna Taylor's killings, you know, our country is trying to deal with our history in order to have a better present, and in many ways trying to combat the injustices that have already existed in Indigenous communities that have always existed. And we, you know, Jessica and Sammy already talked about the forced removal and this continued way of like, it's our practices that have led to these deficit statistics that exist in Native communities. And so until we address those things, they're not going to go away, and it's going to continue to be something that we as a country have to work through. And at American Rivers, you guys are working through that in these different ways. And I'd just love to hear a little bit about how you're working with Indigenous communities and how you're working with organizations that are focused on environmental justice and equity work, and why, and how you're doing that in ways that aren't extractive. I think that's an important thing, because right now a lot of people are learning, you know, they're learning that that they have to do better, but sometimes the ways in that they do it can be really like transactional and extractive. And so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you guys are working through, as an organization, as a country-wide like organization, national organization, how are you all working through those difficult questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a lot of work and it's ongoing and we're never going to be done. Your question, when I first saw it, Faith, it reminded me of some conversations that I had a while back with Ray Gardner. Ray he passed away in 2015. He was a member of our board of directors. He was also the chair of the Chinook Nation at the mouth of the Columbia River. And he helped bring, more so than ever at American Rivers, this realization and understanding that, that he said the first thing you need to do is talk to the tribes. No matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, they know more about these rivers than anyone else. They've been here longer than anyone. And what are their goals? Not what's American Rivers agenda, but what do they need? And do they need your help? And so I remember a lot of those conversations years ago now, that I think helped our organization move forward in some of that. And he also talked a lot about just the importance, which it sounds so obvious, but we clearly need to be constantly reminded of the importance of building relationships, and that a real relationship involves vulnerability and risk and humility, not only at the individual level and also at the organizational level. And that can be an uncomfortable place, but I think that's a relationship, and that it can be it's really rich and strong as you build it. So I have two examples or stories to kind of illustrate some of this work that we're doing right now. One is in California. And so 1 million people in California don't have access to clean, affordable, safe drinking water in their homes. 1 million people in California, like today. So this has been an issue for a while. It's a big issue in the Central Valley, where you have agricultural pollution, contaminating groundwater supplies, overpumping of groundwater. And so it's been an issue for a long time. We've been supporting the local organizations like Community Water Center and others that are there working on these issues, trying to get people the water they need. Recently, it's even more of a crisis because we're in a pandemic. And people need clean water in their homes to wash their hands and to cook during this pandemic. People don't want to leave their homes to go have to buy water. It's expensive and we're supposed to be staying home. So there's all these levels of problems. And, we could say, well, we're a river group, sorry, not our problem, but it is our problem because, if we stay in our silos, we work on rivers, they work on clean water, they work on social justice. Like they actually all have the same root problem. These things are all connected. And I don't think we're going to get to the root problem unless we all start working together. So that's what we're trying to do more and more in places like California and of course elsewhere too. The second little example is on the Snake River. So, we're here in Portland and Sammy and Jessica are up on the upper Snake, and kind of in between us, there are 4 dams on the lower Snake River in Eastern Washington. And these dams, they were built in the 60s and 70s. They have been absolutely devastating to salmon runs, to the native people that have depended on these rivers and the salmon for thousands and thousands of years. They've had impacts up and down the food chain, including with orca whales, the southern resident killer whales that depend on these Chinook salmon, the delicious big fish, as a staple of their diet. There was a great blog I just saw today by Trout Unlimited on the impact each dam on the Columbian snake are causing, like 23% of killing 23% of baby salmon each time at each dam. Chinook are at 1% of historic runs, 1%. So a cascade of problems throughout the ecosystem with people and wildlife. The orcas are starving. 2 years ago, the orca crisis was in the headlines because a baby whale died. And people might have seen this, the Seattle Times covered it, where the mother whale carried the baby for days and days, and it was absolutely heartbreaking. I think the region was just transfixed by this story. So at that time, I was talking to Jamie Pinkham, who's the head of the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission. And I said, you know, wow, this orca stuff is in the news, and maybe finally people are waking up to this problem that we need to deal with these dams and restore the salmon runs, and people are waking up. And he said, yeah, you know, my people, the Nez Perce tribe, have been saying this for years and years and years. And why haven't people listened? Why now? I mean, great, but why did it take an orca when people have been saying this for so long? And I think that's a really good question. And I think that's something we need to ask ourselves. You know, and that's why these issues of, you know, the environmental justice or intersectional environmentalism, like, it's not just about wildlife or places, but people, like, it's all connected. And so we need to do a better job of working together and seeing those connections.
Totally, yeah. I definitely have been feeling a lot of the why now recently, and being like, all right, doesn't matter why people are here, so let's like get the tools in hand and move forward together. And speaking of tools, I really appreciate how Jessica and Sammy have been talking about that. And just so folks know, we started the film at 5 PT, and our plan is to go for another 30 minutes. So we will be getting to your questions. We're not gonna like kick off in 2 minutes and be like, sorry, thanks for being here. But so the next we're gonna talk about, Sammy and Jessica, the work they're doing is under an organization that they founded called River Nua. And I had added on the bottom of my screen, right under where my name is, the website, but I'm realizing that my name is blocking it. So I will put the link in the chat. They're doing incredible work, and you can find out how to support it there. But basically, can you guys tell us about River Nua and tell us about what you're doing and what your goals are? I think someone did ask, what are your goals? What are your desires, your big dreams that you have related to the work that you're doing?
What's the name?
Oh, so River Nua. So Nua is the Shoshone word for peoples, and so we're just the river peoples, the Shoshone River peoples that have come back to the place. So that's what we were sort of playing around with. One of our elders, you've seen her in the film, Diane Yoop. She really likes that idea about us coming back as river people. So it's sort of stuck. We've kind of been tossing some ideas around about what we call ourselves, but that's kind of what stuck. So that's who we are.
Yeah, and also just to add to the Nua part, so people, if you are not living by the traditional values of what is a healthy person, then you're not a whole person. And so to be Nua, you have to be taking care of yourself. And so that's part of that idea too. But I guess kind of what we're doing, like I said, Sam and I, we just work really well together. And so, you know, over time, Sam was doing his research as a scientist on the river. He was doing some higher education outreach, so working with college students. And I was finishing up school, learning about how to be an effective Indigenous teacher, how to work within my community and work as a person who has the same values and world views and understandings as the students I teach, and how to tie the two. And we realized that, you know, just an easy kind of gloss over would be education, outreach, you know, breaking STEM barriers, but it's a lot more than that. It's all these layerings of things that through River Noah, we've been able to kind of organize a lot better. And like we say that, you know, we're taking students out, that it's, you know, we do curriculum down the river, they are learning, they're building their confidence as STEAM, so science, technology, engineering, artists, and mathematics. They're seeing themselves in those fields and more, and realizing that they come from this really rich culture that, you know, when they're off of the river, they might be told different, but to be on the river experiencing things they're seeing firsthand, you know, what's their power? And that's, you know, what we do. There's more. It's hard to like really put it into like, you know, just a few words, but really we're just, we like to say we're just being good relatives and taking our community down the river and being with them in holistic ways.
I wanted to go back to, oh, I'm sorry, Sammy.
No, go ahead.
I actually wanted to reference something you had said in the rambling question I asked y'all earlier, but you had mentioned that you guys aren't paddling whitewater or rafting because that's necessarily what you want to do, but that's how you're accessing your ancestral lands. And American Rivers, you have a lot to do with getting people out on the water, and we have this grand permit system for accessing a lot of these protected areas throughout the country. And I mean, that statement just really kind of clicked something for me as part of a paddling community that like covets Middle Fork permits and covets Grand Canyon permits, and like we're recreating on lands that have been stolen and aren't recognized. And now in the last couple of years, maybe if at all, people are starting to really at least acknowledge that, if not maybe trying to do something about that. And I mean, for me, that kind of just, it brought up a lot of internal personal questions that I have to deal with myself. But I also, being part of this tour and having been able to work with Amy and now work with y'all and the NRS, I was hoping maybe if you had something to say about that, and then maybe Mark, you could touch on how NRS is, you know, trying to deal with this, how you're trying to put a foot forward in that kind of conversation, and see what we have to go from there. Yeah, I'm the diffuse question guy tonight. This one kind of really got me, so I don't have arrows for you or pointed questions for you.
No, diffuse works for me. I think just going back to kind of my first conversation with Sammy, and then we followed up not long after and just shared a meal together with Sammy and Jessica's family at my house, and had a really special conversation then with Skip Armstrong as well, who was the filmmaker here. And I just can't really, sorry, I actually get emotional when I talk about this. I can't really explain how powerful it was to talk to those guys and just like realize my whole life I've been like regarding these communities through this veil and not really understanding where they're coming from. And it was just really powerful for me to like get a little glimpse through their eyes of how they and their people view these places, and really just disabused me of so many notions that I have always had and things I've taken for granted. And you know, and it really is like open a new chapter in my life, honestly, where it's not just, you know, more of an appreciation for the perspective of Indigenous people, but for all people, and to make me realize, man, you don't know what their experience is. You haven't walked a mile in their shoes. And so I just thank Sam and Jessica for opening that door for me. And it's kind of led to a new realization and some great conversations with people like Amy Kober here, where we realized, you know, we've been doing a lot of work in conservation for years. I think you've all seen it, and that's great. But conservation in and of itself is in some ways self-serving for us as a brand, as a community. We want to protect the places where we like to get outside and you know, that keeps our industry alive and all of that. But realizing that conservation and environmental justice and social justice and even economic justice are all intertwined like the basket that Jessica's weaving in her lap right now, I think. And come on, show us. Isn't that beautiful? And that, you know, just kind of preaching to the choir over and over again about conservation and preservation and access wasn't enough. That we need to build a future where all these communities are involved, and we're thinking of it from the human side and not just the recreational side. And, you know, someday down the road, maybe we have a group of people, a community that's all communities coming together and talking about these issues in a holistic way. And so this is just one tiny step, and it's an opportunity for us to sort of use our megaphone as an outdoor industry brand and some of the financial resources that we have and the competencies that we have in communications, and help an organization like River Nua get started and get this conversation started and go from there.
Thanks. I'm with you on the, it's just it's obviously extremely pressing and pertinent for you, Sammy and Jessica, but like just watching and hearing a lot of it, it's definitely reflecting on that a lot for the last couple of weeks. And while I'm on the road, it's definitely always been at the forefront of my mind, especially as I'm on a kayaking trip with several friends that we love exploring. We go up into the mountains and try to find new rivers and new creeks and see what's down in the river valley. And it's a facet of the access conversation that I've never thought about as deeply until now, and will never think about as shallowly again. And kind of from that, I just would like to hear folks' thoughts on access as it pertains to these rivers, like the Middle Fork Salmon, the South Fork, and how they see that conversation evolving through works like the River Nua and through American Rivers and through NRS. And if we could have Sammy and Jessica start, and we'll kind of go in that order, I'd really appreciate it.
So first, I just wanted to say thank you. I know, you know, being in these conversations, there's a lot of vulnerability for everybody. And one of our favorite memories is, Mark, going and visiting you and your family, and just having those connections. Like, you can tell when, you know, you're just around people who are listening, which is really great. I think just even in that, feeling heard carries a lot of weight. I think, you know, this idea of something that hits close to me is just the idea of like homelands. Like when people are going out, wherever they are on indigenous lands, they're in someone's home. And just to even ask, like, who are the people who are from here? Whose lands am I on? How can I be respectful to acknowledge them? That just addresses, you know, very surfacely, but just practicing and putting effort in acknowledging and not participating in cultural erasers, which is something that we experience all the time. The other thing would be, again, which is really great to hear, like, how can I collaborate with the tribes that are around me? Whose story is being told? Is it a single story? Is it, you know, a story that is present? Or is it like something that's been in the past and just the status quo? Like, all of these questions are, they're just thoughts. They're free. They don't cost anything to have these things come into your mind. But a lot of times I get frustrated just as, I don't know, as a mother, as a Native woman, as someone who, I see myself in this land, and the reflection of how the land is being treated is how I'm being treated. how my daughters are going to be treated, how my grandmothers have been treated. And so the idea of when people are getting mad because they don't have access to recreation, or they don't have access to climb some, monument or something that is very superficial, and not even care that there's people who need healing, who need access to touch that land, to take care of themselves, and people are not batting an eye. Those are the things that really touch my heart. And I feel like when we start having those conversations that are difficult, and you might not know what to say, or you don't have the right words, a lot of times I'm like, I don't know the answer. I don't know how to fix things, but we're talking about it, and that's great. Because I feel like when you hold those things in, those uncertainties, it just breaks you down. And if we're all doing that, we're not going to be healthy people.
Thank you. That was mic drop. That's great.
So we'd love to hear Amy and Mark also, in your work, when this word access comes up, what are the ways that you're thinking about it? But I'm going to challenge you to try to give a succinct answer, and then we're going to also try to get to the audience questions, because there's amazing questions coming in. So I know we're all like in this place right now, and I want to stay there and also get to these questions.
I can be brief, hopefully. I mean, when I think of access, when I'm thinking about rivers and water, which are like the source of life, I mean, it's as fundamental and important as that. And who has access to that? And that's an issue of power and freedom and health and wellness. And I mean, it's life. It's that basic but big. And then I also think about, as a mom, the next generation of people who are going to be, fighting climate change. And you don't fight for a place unless you love it. And so how are we getting our kids to fall in love with our homes, our communities, our places where we live? And you need access to be able to foster those connections.
And I'll add just briefly as well. I think that we tend to think about access as just sort of getting out of the way of folks. And even our kind of tagline for this campaign, which is breaking down barriers to the outdoors, is a little bit inadequate, I would say, because I think access is about more than getting out of the way. It's about building pathways and building bridges. And I think, River Nua is a fantastic example of an organization that's doing exactly that. And part of what we're trying to do here with Just Add Water is to support some of these organizations, highlight them, bring awareness to what they're doing, what their work is, because they are the ones that are building these pathways, creating this access, and helping people get to, not only have the place available to them, but develop skills they need to enjoy that place. So I think, that's what it's all about. It's not just getting out of the way. It's about creating those pathways and building those bridges.
Awesome. Yes. Shout out from the rooftops. A few questions we're going to pull into one. I saw Alonzo, the flautist, mentioned is in the chat. Yeah. One of the questions was, what kind of flute is Alonzo playing? And then also, when you answer that one, can you talk about coordinating and coming up with funding for these big kind of trips that you do with River Nua? So let's start with those two.
So the first question is an I don't know. He's on here, so maybe he'll comment, and then we can tell you. So Alonzo, they're asking what flute was that you're using. I think it's the double.
Somebody Facebook him.
the double one. I think they're asking. Let's see.
Drone, he said.
Oh, yep.
A drone flute?
A drone flute?
Oh, I'll buy it, yeah. Sounds good.
You can't have drones in the Middle Fork. Anyways, it's a joke that's probably for people that know the Middle Fork.
Yeah.
So
Funding.
there's a complex question here that comes up, but I think we've been thinking about. Alonzo said boo on the joke. So we've been fortunate enough to run into a couple small pots of money, but those with the National Science Foundation and then NASA, but those have all dried up. This year we have funding through the tribes and the Bonneville Power Administration, but that's also limited. That's a one-time kind of deal. And so those small pots of money really put us into a shoestring budget. And that shoestring budget is what we've been building all this off of. But majority of it has just been me and Jessica's time. So pretty much just coming out of our pocket. And even during the times when we do the trips, some of the equipment costs or whatever the costs, some of that stuff comes out of our pocket personally.
Yeah.
And so that's really where we've been excited about this support, is being able to reach out and ask for help, because that's something healthy as well, as to ask for help. And so that's the one thing that we're trying to do through this. NRS has been awesome. Mark has been helping us out with like equipment loans from their company, stuff we borrowed. So we've got some inflatable kayaks and a raft, and we've been able to really get ourselves out on the river and have the kids get in inflatable kayaks and get through the rapids and have more fun. And but we've also reached out to just people in the community who have been able to loan us their rafts or come along and be guides. We have
Bring their salsa.
Yeah, bring their salsa. We've had professional guides that have joined us. Jake and Holly are awesome. Adam and Chelsea. Adam is a colleague of mine, but they've been so awesome. Those two as couples have been so powerful in helping us just keep things organized, keeping us so Jessica really supporting her, putting the curriculum on for the students. Like all of that support from them has been instrumental in us being able to be free on the rivers to use those points of opportunity to really get curriculum out to these students and like really get them moving from sun up to sundown. I mean, these kids are working all day and they don't even know it. They're just having fun. So
yeah. I will also say that, so this last year was the first year that I didn't have to focus so much on cooking or like the logistical things, and really just to express myself as a teacher. And that was such a big gift. But I think I had said before that Sam and I, we believe in this work so much, and we feel that it's so connected to our family that we don't mind having to, kind of pitch in, and I don't know how to say it. We make sure the work gets done because it's important. But at the same time, I just see there's so much potential. Like it's I don't know, it's like this little baby fire in our hands right now. And it's like, it could just, ignite in so many people. We could have more trips, we could have more youth, more families, all of these possibilities. But for right now, and what our means are, like, we have to limit ourselves and to think of, what would it look like when we wouldn't have to worry about, do we have enough money for food, or does everybody have a life jacket? Do we need to go get a life jacket? Do people have river shoes? Things like that. It's like, because a lot of them, they are coming with no knowledge at all of how to get down the river. And so, like we're going to be doing next week, checking in with students, finding out what do they need, what do we need to get for them. All of these things that kind of hinder us a bit as far as our thinking space. And so we were just talking, what was it, a little while ago, like, we go down the river, we are river people, we travel on the water, but there's also trails, we gather food, we do all of these things. Imagine what that curriculum or that learning space or that healing space would look like. And so, like Sam was saying, it's not hard, it's scary to ask for help. But we really believe in this work. So, yeah.
I love that reminder from Sam that asking for help is healthy too. I was like, oh, Faith, listen to that. There's a question that came in. It said, I love the idea of moving towards indigeneity. It feels intuitive, the most sustainable way forward for humanity. I grew up far removed from the outdoors, as many in this culture do. And because a lot of Black people don't grow up with safe or easy access, But I feel a root visceral connection to everything you guys are sharing, especially around finding our way back to connection with each other and with Earth. I would love to hear any wisdom you have for people like me who didn't grow up comfortable outside and have no direct knowledge of our ancestors' connection to the land, but who are learning and yearning to reorient ourselves to the land.
These are like my favorite topics.
Yes. As far as having wisdom, we're still working on that one. But we do have people who are in our lives who talk to us about, so we brought up the idea earlier of gifting, and gifting is a really powerful way of transforming energy. So you can take something negative and you can invest your emotions into that. Like if Jess was just making that basket and she was thinking about something and she's working through it emotionally, that gifting of that basket is also a vessel of her emotions and what she worked through. And so what she's gifting is something, and what she's turning that into is something special. And so that wisdom about who we are on the land and how we have to transfer that to other people, that's been overlooked in colonialism. That's where we got erased. And so our powerful voice and our spirit on the land is what's there. That's what you're feeling. But the conduit in between that is the voice that we have and that we understand. But it took us 500 years to get here. Don't expect us to figure this out overnight. Mm-hmm. And so in the last 500 years of colonialism, we're going to have to really start to untangle and unwrap what that means and unpack it. But I mean, you can just stop on one word and really start to explore what that word means and how that fits into our life and what it does in disrupting and interrupting or complementing or situating the place of where we're at with something. So whatever that is, indigeneity. So that indigenous identity with land, what does that mean, and how do you get it? Like, we're not here to be extracted from. And so we have to be careful about how we offer ourselves and what we're doing, because we're also trying to protect what we have to offer, because we're still trying to put ourselves back together.
And so the other part of that too is the idea of being a lifelong learner. And so although we know how to do, weave baskets or gather foods, it's going to take our whole life to be Noah people. And I think we really rely on our elders and the leaders in our communities. But at the same time, for those that are like hungry to be in nature or, have this calling to be connected as well, that's really great space to be allies, to be able to say, like, how can I work with, people who are having similar struggles as me, who, it's not uncommon that a lot of struggles that happen on the reservation also happen in inner cities. It's that same violence, that same dysfunction of being separated. And so it is really nice and really powerful and healing to come together as groups. And although I might not understand your struggle specifically, I know what those feelings are, and it would benefit me to work with you and heal you, because that's your job. And it's not that I'm healing you, it's that these are the tools that I've gathered, and I'm going to give you what I got. But at the same time, you're going to have to understand how to use those for yourself.
Yeah. Speaking of mathematics and everyone being mathematicians, I'm going to take 5 questions, bring them into 2 questions, and ask you to answer them in one answer. We have 3 questions that are asking about how can I help as a river person, as a fellow Idahoan, as a personal trainer interested in health and wellness. How can I help? And I think the question is also, how can I be a better relative? So there's 3 questions there. And you remember when I said it was okay to forget what you were saying earlier? Let's start with those 3 questions as one, and I'll work on my math while you guys are answering that one.
So first of all, you could go to our website at rivernua.org, and there's links in there. You can either make a donation or you can become a partner. And if you have some skills like a guide, we really love professional guides. They're just so awesome. They're so organized. They know so much more about being on the river than we do. So those partnerships are important. Just reaching out to us and letting us sort through those things. Like we said, we're also protective of our time and space that we have available to give out. But you know, we'll do the best we can. It's a busy time right now also, so I also want to put that out there. We're getting ready. We got 30 people for each trip to go down the river. We got 2 trips this summer, and it's really me and Jessica that carry a majority of that weight. And so we basically got to move a couple mountains here in the next couple weeks for the month of July. So if you don't hear from us immediately, don't get discouraged.
I think too, just, you know, people that are on the river regularly, like, just to acknowledge the indigenous people of the land. Don't participate in cultural erasers. Don't be sharing a single story. Make sure to include as best as you can the people that are of that land. I can't remember the other questions.
No, it was mainly how do we be a better relative? How can we help? With the gist of the questions. And the other 2 questions, there's 2 questions that kind of talk about what can people, what does the history of losing homelands? How does that impact your experience? And we kind of talked earlier this week just about not only how that history impacts your experience, but how people not knowing that history impacts the world that we all live in. So I wonder, that's like a thesis, but if you would like to distill a thesis for us in a way, we'd love to hear what your visceral thoughts are to this question.
That was pretty much the reason why I went back to school. So my story about being a survivor of domestic abuse, you know, I'm a survivor of child abuse. So most of my life I known, you know, how what I thought was love to be very dysfunctional. And after I started working on myself, it's like kind of coming out of a fog and just like seeing these patterns over and over and over again, being able to recognize them, and that it's happening with, you know, within my own community. Other tribal communities, Native American women and men have the highest rates of domestic abuse. And like, why? Like, I had such a strong drive to understand why. Why is this part of our story? And the more you pull back on the layers, the more you understand that it comes from settler colonialism. It comes from being ripped apart as people, being forced into boarding schools. And it's like it starts at a place and it just grows and grows and grows. And so, you know, pulling back my own layers and my family layers, you know, my grandpa, he was in boarding school. He ran away at 16 because it was so terrible and joined the military just to get out of that situation, and then experiencing all of those, you know, PTSD that comes with being in a war and all these things. And he was a really loving man, but he was part of that trauma that also went further down to our family. And not that I'm saying he ever did anything, it's just that is the family legacy that we've had. And for me, this work was so important because I have children, we have children, and it's like it needs to stop with me. And I'm going to be the one that disrupts that legacy. And I feel like because we've understood this and talked about it so much within ourselves, that we wanted to share that with our community as well. And so being forcibly removed from the lands has had intergenerational effects that we see today. And it's frustrating and heartbreaking because our young people who are experiencing things, they haven't yet gotten those tools to understand why. And so that's what we're doing.
So we obviously could be here for a long time asking you all questions. We're technically at time, so I'm going to ask you one more, and then we will leave us all wanting more, because that is how we continue to support the work that you're doing. So everyone, if you haven't bookmarked, go to the website. We'll see if we can save all of your questions and try to answer them in a follow-up in some way. Knowing that Sammy and Jessica are moving 2 mountains the next 2 weeks. So, you know, it might take a second, but I'd say the last question would be, do you have a vision of what you want River Nua to grow into? And well, yeah.
Well, we have a few ideas, but essentially the dream is to be able to do this full time and to be able to affect and impact as many of our tribal members as we can, and even maybe have that potential be able to be found in other communities. So what we're doing as far as like an education on land, how do we expand that out? Because there's other indigenous tribes that are trying to work in this area, and some of them are looking towards like a model, like what works, how do you make things work, and we've been looking for those too. And so we know it's out there, and so we would like to be a part of that. And I think right now we're sort of limited because, you know, we're both finishing up school, we're in between jobs, we're trying to move on to the next thing, you know. You're supposed to go get a job after you get out of school, but those things are sort of in the air right now. And especially with the coronavirus, COVID stuff, we've also been left in limbo because there's been hiring freezes. So our tribe isn't able to help us as much as they want to. And we are probably not as much as needed as some of our other tribal members. And so right now, the dream is a dream, and where it's at and where we're at is very far from each other, but we still see it and we know what that is and we have a vision towards it.
Plugging away.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Amy from American Rivers and Mark from NRS for putting together Just Add Water. Thank you to our partners, Orvis and Understolen Media also, for just like pushing through, you know, when everything's been changing, because obviously we have conversations like this and we can tell it's so worth it. And Adam and I are so pleased to be able to be a part of these incredible conversations that we've been having that are fuel for thought and action. So everyone who's here, spread the word. We have 2 more weeks of Just Add Water. Bring a friend to the next event, and just thank you all again for being here.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep.
And to the questions of when this will be available, Mark answered in the chat there that we're recording this whole thing, and it'll be available in the weekly update email next Tuesday. And reiterating that, like, we're really grateful to have Sammy and Jessica and Amy and Mark and Faith all on the call, and also grateful to all the people that tuned in. We appreciate you sharing this with us, and doubling down on thanks to Sammy and Jessica for doing what you do and making us think extra hard about a lot of stuff. Much appreciated.
Have a great time on the river.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you, everybody.